I'm Kristen Ward, and welcome to Maquette Vallant's Summer of Stories, Episode 5. If you enjoy the show, please like, share, or subscribe below. You can also help sponsor the project by going to paypal.me/kward storydance. Tonight's featured story is Swan, an adaptation of a one-woman theatrical show that I first wrote and produced in 2016. It's a twist on the ugly duckling tale, but based on my own experiences in an adoptive world, and will be told in 2 parts in conjunction with next week's episode 6. If you're interested in more information about Swan, I will post a link to my website in the description below. It was a hot summer day on a little farm in western New York. Children sold lemonade at a roadside stand while dogs licked spilled ice cream with relish. Men and women took breaks from their work to fan themselves and flirt, and down by the pond, a mother duck sat on her nest. All around her, hatchlings from other ducks' perfectly round eggs quacked and peeped, but Mother Duck's egg was just a little bit different. Well, she had not laid it herself like the other ducks had. It had simply rolled into her nest one day as she sat wishing for another child. It was an odd color and larger than the other eggs, but Mother Duck guarded it with care, just the same. Good things come to those who wait, and I have waited a very long time. As if in response, the egg began to tremble and crack, and from it emerged a creature that was as different from the other hatchlings as the egg had been. While they were adorned with bright yellow fluff, hers was a dull gray. They had bright feet and pale beaks, and hers were dark and shiny like coal. And their bright eyes gaped at her dark-rimmed ones as she honked an exuberant hello. And the elders agreed that she had a face that only a mother could love. But Mother Duck did. She named the gray creature Essie, and proudly guided her to the edge of the pond where Brother and Father Duck waited. To everyone's surprise, Essie dove right into the water, and proved to be a better swimmer than many of the little yellow ducklings. Father Duck remarked on how clever she was, and Brother Duck splashed and said, "Hey, Buttface, I'll race you," which in Brother Duck speak means welcome to the family. Not all of the other ducks were as kind, however. The older ones whispered loudly about the strange and clumsy duckling, and the younger ones laughed out loud and called her ugly. Essie knew she was not beautiful, but she did the best she could to fit in with the other ducks as Father Duck showed her where to snack on small fish and tasty weeds. Mother Duck taught her how to quack and peep, and she and Brother Duck played games, splashing across the pond and spinning with their tails in the air. One day, a bullfrog came to the pond. This was one of those wide-mouthed frogs, all opinions and very little ears to listen to those around him. And he took one look at the pale gray creature swimming amongst the little yellow ducks, and he humphed. He humphed a humph that the whole pond could hear. "Goodness, what are you?" Essie didn't like his tone, but she had been taught to be polite to strangers. "Well, I'm Essie. I'm not sure what I am, but my family are ducks. My egg rolled into my mother's nest, and well, here I am." Bullfrog was not appeased. "Not know what you are?" Where did your egg come from? Where is your real family? You should not be here. You should go and find out where you belong. Essie tried to forget about what the bullfrog had said. But when the ducklings teased and the elders whispered, she began to wonder if maybe he was right. And so she said goodbye to her family and set off into the world. It's hard to travel with a heavy heart. And Essie grew very tired as she plodded on and the sky grew dark. Finally, she saw a welcoming light up ahead, and she followed it to a little cabin. Inside, a woman sliced fresh bread, and suddenly Essie was very hungry. So hungry, in fact, that she flew right into a cat who perched on the window ledge, almost knocking her off. "Excuse me, I didn't mean to bump you. I smelled the bread and I was just so hungry. I just wanted to look." Cat smoothed her fur. "If you're really hungry, well, you'd best do more than look. Why don't you ask the lady for some?" "Oh, well, I can't do that. Why would she want to share her nice bread with an ugly thing like me?" Cat just shrugged. "Shouldn't it be up to her whether or not she finds you ugly? Besides, what's the worst that could happen? Well, she'll throw a shoe at us, and we'll duck. If we keep trying, eventually she'll run out of shoes." Essie went to the window, looked up at the woman, and let out a very small quack. The woman didn't even look up. Cat shrugged. "If you want to be heard, you must be loud, like this. Yow!" "There, one shoe down. Now it's your turn. Here, take this for luck." Essie still wasn't so sure about this, but at Cat's kind offering and her ever-rumbling stomach, Essie quieted her fears, and she took a breath and let out a yonk that shook the shutters of the house, and the woman opened the door. Cat bowed and purred. Essie did a little bob and a peep and looked down at her coal feet, waiting for another shoe to be thrown. But instead, the woman smiled and let them in. She gave them warm milk to drink and fresh bread to eat. And later, as they sat by the fire, cozy and full, Essie told Cat all about her duck family, the farm, and what the bullfrog had said. "I'm supposed to be with others like me, but I don't even know what that is. What if there's no one and I'm alone in the world?" Cat yawned. "Oh, being alone isn't so bad. Well, you found me alone on that window ledge outside. And the woman was alone with her milk and her bread and no one to share it with. Now we're alone together, which is the best way to be alone." Time passed, and one evening Cat came back from her evening walk with news. I have seen the most beautiful flock of birds. Well, they are snowy white, but they have long necks like yours and dark around their eyes like yours. Perhaps you are one of them." Essie couldn't sleep that night. Instead, she sat at the window, watching the sky for the flock of birds that Cat had seen, just in case they couldn't sleep either. Did they miss her? Would they even know her? And all the while, Bullfrog's voice echoed in her head. "You should not be here. You should go and find out where you belong." By daylight, Essie had made up her mind to go. And so she said goodbye to Cat and the lady, and set off in the direction that Cat had seen the white birds flying, hoping with each hop or flap of her wings to catch even a glimpse of the beautiful white birds. But they seemed to ever be just over the horizon. Essie was beginning to wonder if Cat had even seen such birds when she came upon a garden. It reminded her of the farm where she had hatched, and yet held so much that was new to her. Rich purple eggplant, crisp lettuces, and sharp red radishes grew in red earth, surrounded by flowers that smelled at once sweet and earthy. There was a music in the air too, filled with rhythms and melodies Essie had never heard before. It was so alluring that Essie followed the sound to the center of the garden, hoping perhaps to find the flock of birds that Cat had seen. But instead, the bird in the center of the garden was unlike any Essie had ever met before. Her plumage sparkled with rich royal blues, golds, and greens, and she moved with the music. She bounced, she swayed, she fluttered, and she waved, as if she were each sound itself. And suddenly, Essie was very shy. But she remembered what Cat had said about allowing others a chance to decide for themselves whether or not they will like you. And she stepped up. "Hi, I'm Essie. I'm sorry to bother you. I was looking for the flock that I belong to, and I got lost in your beautiful garden." "My name is Leal. I guess you could say I am lost as well. I made this garden to be as much like my home as I could, but I believe my flock are still very far away. I get sad sometimes because I miss them." "Oh, well, you must not be sad today, or you would not have been dancing so joyfully." Leal just smiled. "Oh, my friend, it is because I am sad that I dance. Listen. The rhythm sounds like a heartbeat, and it reminds me that I am alive. And the melodies go up and down, reminding me that life too has its ups and downs. And when I move joyfully with my body, well, sooner or later, my heart begins to believe it. Here, put this on, and I'll show you." Essie tried to follow Leal's movements, but they weren't like any way Essie had ever moved before. Not like swimming or flying or even hopping. But at Leal's encouragement, Essie closed her eyes and began to feel the music. And as she did, her ugliness, her awkwardness, and the bullfrog's cruel words all faded away until there was only Essie, the garden, and her new friend Leal, who sat laughing and clapping her hands along with the music as Essie danced. As you can see, I wear a lot of hats when I tell this story. And each one represents someone or a group of people who helped make me who I am today. I had a lot of fun working on them when I was first working on the theatrical production of this back in 2016, making Cat and Bullfrog and Mother Duck. You can have fun making hats at home, too. I made a very simple version of Beetle, who you'll meet in the next episode, just out of construction paper and some pipe cleaners. Who's helped you in your life, and what animals might they be? Make your hat and take a picture. You can post on Instagram or Facebook with hashtag #MVStoryDance, and I would love to see your creations. This story represents my own search for belonging from Essie's point of view. But Essie is not alone in her search. Cat dreams of being alone together, and Leal misses her flock as she builds a new life for herself in her garden. It got me thinking a lot about families who might be building new lives here in Pittsburgh and what needs they might have. I called on Allie Reefer, Public Relations Specialist at JFCS Pittsburgh, to help. Hi, Allie.
Hi.
Can you tell us a little bit about JFCS, what it stands for, and how folks watching can find out more about it?
Sure. JFCS stands for Jewish Family and Community Services. We're a local social service agency. We have a website. It's jfcspgh.org. And we also have Facebook pages. So our main Facebook page is under Jewish Family and Community Services. That's a great way to find out updated information. And then we actually have individual Facebook pages for a lot of our departments, just because there's like specific audiences that might be interested in those topics. So you can usually find those separate pages from our main page, but there's one for like refugee and immigrant services, one for the immigration legal department, one for our career development center, our food pantry. If you like search JFCS in the search bar on Facebook, all of those pages should come up. So if anybody's interested in finding out like updated information about us, that's a great way to do it.
Oh, that's great. And you have a lot of volunteer opportunities too, don't you?
Typically we do. Right now we do have significantly less because of the precautions we're taking with COVID-19. So normally people can volunteer in our food pantry. They can volunteer with Age Well Pittsburgh, which is like our program for seniors. They can volunteer with our refugee and immigrant services. Some of those opportunities are still available. It's more remote work. Like refugee and immigrant services, people can be mentors to newer refugee families, helping them learn some basic English, cultural orientation. We have an after-school program for the refugee kids that they can like help them with their homework. Obviously right now that's not meeting because school's not meeting. And they're doing all of those services remotely right now. And the same with Age Well. Age Well people are like calling the seniors rather than visiting them in person. And I think they have started some of the Age Well rides a little bit, and some of the collaboration with the library for our Age Well Reads program, which helps get books from the library for seniors.
Oh, that's great. And I know a lot of our seniors are probably feeling extra isolated right now.
Yeah, they've actually been able to reach even more of the seniors through the phone calls and video chats, which has been really amazing, especially because this can be a really isolating time for them. So even though it's not the same as in-person visits, it's worked out really well. And we've been able to reach just as many, if not more people through our modified age well visits program.
Well, thank you. So in Swan, I tell a story that's based on my own experience as an adoptee.
Mm-hmm.
And so in my story, the egg rolls into her mother's nest one day. But I know the adoption process for new parents is actually quite a bit more complicated than that. How does your organization help new moms who are just starting out with adopted or foster children?
Well, we actually have a support group that's for, I don't even think it's just for new moms. I think it's just for moms in general who have adopted or are fostering children. And it just gives them, it is a limited group to keep it small so that it has a more intimate feeling. But it's just to give them a place to talk about their struggles and be honest about their feelings. Some of them have adopted internationally, some of them have adopted domestically, and then some of them are, like I said, foster parents. But it just really creates a space where they can talk about the things that they're each going through, because a lot of the struggles are similar, and relate to one another, give advice, give tips, and just have that environment to feel supported and have an open space to be able to kind of get all of their feelings and frustrations and even like the good feelings out there to share with other people that understand what their situation is.
That's great. And I think that puts parents in a better place too, because for me, being raised adopted, it was something to celebrate. Mm-hmm. And I know that in order to pass that on to your child, you have to be in a centered place where you can have that celebration too.
Yeah. So it's a really supportive environment that just allows them to share with each other and provide resources for each other, which is also great because you don't have to feel like you're going through things alone. So
wonderful. So you mentioned a little bit about your immigrant and refugee services. What parts of the world do the people you serve come from, and what brings them to Pittsburgh?
So that's actually a pretty broad question, just because we have a couple of different programs under that. So we have our refugee resettlement program, and those clients come from like specific countries, obviously, because there are only some countries that refugees are coming to the United States from. So recently, in the last year or so, most of those clients have been from the Democratic Republic of Congo and from Afghanistan. We've had a couple Burmese clients who are coming from Myanmar, but just very few. We do serve a lot of people from Bhutan through that program, although most of them, they're not arriving, they're not new arrivals anymore. And then we have a lot of Syrians who are also not currently arriving here, but we resettled them in the past that we work with. So those are the main groups that the refugee resettlement team works with. But we also have a program called Immigrant Services and Connections, which actually works with any immigrant in Allegheny County, regardless of what country they're from, regardless of their it doesn't matter. They don't have to be a refugee. It doesn't matter what type of immigrant they are. They can even be some of them are even U.S. citizens now, but they came as immigrants and now just need additional services because of language or cultural barriers. So we work with people from all over with that program, but we do tend to have a lot of Bhutanese because that's one of the largest that's one of the largest immigrant groups in Pittsburgh. Most of them are refugees. And then actually quite a few Latino groups. So we have a lot of Guatemalans we serve through that. That's one of our biggest groups, but we've also had a growing amount of Venezuelans that we're serving through that program because a lot of them are arriving here through different programs because of the situation in Venezuela right now. So it's a wide variety.
That is.
But those are some of the primary groups we serve. Also a lot of Syrians through that program as well. So.
That's great. So what are some simple things that folks watching can do to help our new neighbors feel like they belong?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the ways is to volunteer with a local agency. JFCS isn't the only place that offers volunteer opportunities, although obviously we do have a lot of volunteer opportunities available for people. But there are several other organizations in the region. It's not usually hard to find them. You just Google search like refugee services or immigrant services Pittsburgh, and you can find usually whole lists of them. But you can do everything from like, being a kind of, not a friend. They're called mentors, but there's a program that matches families and they just help them like integrate into Pittsburgh and learn about Pittsburgh. And a lot of times they'll do fun things together. It's not so much of the like, cultural orientation or English language learning specifically. It's more like just being a neighbor. Or you can teach English, volunteer to like tutor English with people, or do like something like the after school program. There are a couple of different like options for things like that. So that's one of the, like, it's obviously a more intense way because it involves a lot of time commitment and like hands-on, but it's definitely one of the best ways to get to know your refugee and immigrant neighbors. There are also quite a few refugee and immigrant-owned businesses in Pittsburgh. JFCS created a list for them, and with some help from Literacy Pittsburgh, which is another agency here in Pittsburgh that serves refugees and immigrants, of the restaurants and markets that are owned by refugees and immigrants. It's on our one website that is for World Refugee Day, which happened in the middle of June. But it's just like, it's not even a comprehensive list. It's not everything, but it's a large list of local businesses. So that's a great way, because when you go in those restaurants, a lot of times you're the only like, non-immigrant in that store. So it's a good way to kind of just like learn, and, it's okay to ask questions and ask them like, oh, how did you start this business? Because they're very proud of the fact that they were able to do that. So a lot of times they're willing to talk about that. But they're also just really friendly, and their food is very good. Every place I've been.
Probably more authentic than we'll find elsewhere.
Yeah. So that's another great way. And then, I think just getting to know your neighbors in general, because it's more likely than not, most of us have at least one neighbor probably around us, unless we live in the middle of nowhere. That's an immigrant. They live all throughout the city. Oh, there are pockets of them in some places, but in general, they live everywhere. So just getting to know your neighbors can be a great way to expand your perspective and like learn about people that are different than you, or even the same as you, but you didn't even know it. If you wouldn't know that they're the same because you didn't get to know them. So I think even just, getting to know the people next door can be one way. And, you can meet a lot of other people. Like you meet one person, they can introduce you to another person. So that could also be a good way, even though it may not be as specifically targeting like immigrant communities. So.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me today, Allie.
Yeah, no problem. So thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching. Again, if you enjoy the show, please like, share, or subscribe below. You can also donate to the project at paypal.me/kward storydance. I'll see you next week for episode 6 and the conclusion of Swan. In the meantime, you can check out any missed episodes right here.